is political journalist Zoë Grünewald and former Labour advisor Stella Tsantekidou. And let's go, Stella, straight into this big question on Rwanda. I think there's been a bit of a disagreement already, but that's why we love it here on TalkTV. This is evidence, I put it to you, Your Honour, that this policy is already working just days after it's gone through the House of Commons.
Not true. There is no evidence that the Rwanda policy is going to work as a deterrent. I really question the motives of the Irish minister who made this comment.
Sorry, you just don't want it to work. But this is someone completely impartial, another, sovereign nation saying, look, this is already pushing people away from the United Kingdom.
Is that solving the problem? Is that solving the problem? Would the problem be solved if all of the asylum seekers suddenly decided that I'm going to go to Ireland, I'm going to make a short stop in the UK, but because I'm afraid that they will send me to Rwanda, which I'm not sure how that would work, because my understanding was that the people who would be sent to Rwanda,
to answer your question,
straight to
Stella,
Rwanda straight away.
Would it solve the problem of the small boats? Yeah, job done.
But so you think that people would stop trying to come? You don't think that they would just try to find another way to come that would prevent them?
Well, they'd struggle to get to Ireland without getting in a boat.
Don't you think that the reason why the problem has reached the stage it has is because people who are determined to come here will find one way or another? And the business model of the people smugglers is so good, because the more difficult we make it for them, the more money they get to ask for.
This breaks the business model of those people traffickers. I think this is evidence.
It makes it
Zoe,
harder and more lucrative.
I think this is the fallacy of any kind of immigration policy that just requires you to close your borders. I mean, these people are not going to stop needing to flee persecution. They're not going to stop needing to flee war zones and to flee environmental catastrophes. Where are they going to go? If they can't get into the United Kingdom, they're going to go somewhere else. The idea that we can solve a global migration crisis that's only going to get worse as climate change gets worse, as there's more conflict, the idea that we can solve it by just taking isolationist policies, I just think it's wrong. They're going to need to go somewhere. The best thing we can do...
Do you think it's what the British people want?
No, I don't think... I think the British people are a tolerant and caring bunch who don't want to see people fleeing persecution, fleeing war zones, be turfed away and have nowhere to go. I mean, we all know that's going to result in much worse geopolitical situations, much more conflict. The best thing we can do is have international cooperation.
They're not fleeing persecution in France, are they?
Well, no, they're not.
And they're not even fleeing persecution in Belfast. Maybe the real thing we should do is maybe we should invite the Republic of Ireland to join the Rwanda scheme with us.
Well, no, because all you're doing is
do you not think they do that?
You're passing the buck. I mean, you're saying we're not going to take it, some other country has to, and that's...
No, that's not. No, sorry, you're completely misunderstanding me. Maybe the thing the British government should do is, because we do have an open border with Southern Ireland, as set out in the Good Friday Agreement, maybe the thing the British government to do is should say to the new Taoiseach in the Republic of Ireland, look, join the Rwanda policy with us. Let's take an all islands of the United Kingdom approach, and United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland, and have the same policy. Maybe the problem for Ireland is that they're not part of the Rwanda policy, rather than us.
Yes, but my point is then they join, and then there's one more country signed up to the Rwanda deal and one more country taking an approach which is very kind of anti-asylum seeker, anti-immigrant, and I think that's wrong.
I don't think Britain is anti-immigrant. I mean, we are allowing 700,000 people in a year legally to the United Kingdom.
Well, that's legal migration.
Yeah, but, it's not like we're not a welcoming country. We welcome a city the size of Birmingham every 18 months. But some of you have been getting in touch via text on 87222, and it is the part of our Friday show where you have the opportunity to star. So, have a quick look at these. I think some of them, for once, I'm amazed. You agree with me. Stella, what jumps out at you?
Yes, so Sarah is saying here, no, it's not going to work, but repatriating every single immigrant and their family to their ancestral homeland with a small but decent sum of money who came here from 1948 and after could work. Very wise, Sarah. Can I be the first one?
What?
Can I be sent...
What? That's nonsense.
Yes,
that's absolute and utter nonsense.
So what I would
didn't
suggest
pick up the irony in your voice there.
Yeah, of course. Sarah, I think you should start with me, because my plane tickets back home to my family every Christmas have become far too expensive. So you can repatriate me for Christmas. I will be back. I'm sorry, I will be back. You can do the same for my summer holidays, and we can continue that forever. You know what? It would still be cheaper than the bloody Rwanda plan, and it would have the same exact effect on making even a dent on the asylum problem.
Stella, we would miss you too much. There'd have to be a Stella Tsantekidou exemption. Zoe, what jumps out at you?
Well, Graham. I think Graham makes quite an interesting point. He says, I don't think the Rwanda deal is needed. All that is needed is border control. If the boats refused entry into British waters, the problem will stop. It's really not difficult.
So how do you stop them?
Well, Graham's picking up on an interesting point, which is that the Home Office and border control are not working or functioning properly. The government...
OK, well, Zoe, let me pick up... I know it's Graham's point, but you tell me, how do you stop them?
Well, I think the first thing, and the thing that the Conservative government do not want to talk about because of their approach to Brexit, because of their approach to the EU, is you need a proper agreement with the EU here about the sort of immigration policy we're going to take. We can't just look at France and say, not our problem, stop sending them over.
Well, it's not quite. I mean, we have given France £500 million to support the detention of these people before they leave France.
It's not just about money, though,
That's
is
half
it?
a
It's about
billion quid of British taxpayers' money given to France. And what have they delivered for it?
But we don't have a properly reciprocal and good relationship with France when it comes to this issue. And as I said, there's no way you can tackle the global immigration crisis. James Cleverly has even gone to the US and made a speech on this. It requires global cooperation. Because we've left the EU, we are not willing to speak to the EU about this. We need to.
But we're not
That's
in the EU.
truth.
The EU's, sort of the point of Brexit is, I always felt this a bit about Ireland, is we should have said, well, look, we'll have an open border between the north and south. The EU's border is a matter for the EU, it's not a matter for Britain.
But that's just naive, because clearly people are coming across to the UK from France. They don't say, oh, well, the UK isn't in the EU anymore, so we'll just stop here,
despite us paying them to do that. Look, let me pick up on Sean. I'd be interested. He says, Sean, I agree with you. He says, it's so effective, it's working already. Isn't this evidence that it's working out despite all the criticism?
No, why is this evidence? Like, the Rwanda plan is going to cover less than 2% of the asylum seekers. Why is this evidence?
But it's never been about taking every...
How does this Irish foreign minister has he personally interviewed these migrants and asked them, are you coming here because you are afraid of being sent to Kigali?
I assume, maybe very naively, that the Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of Ireland knows a bit about the immigration woes or problems or benefits of the Republic of Ireland.
This isn't evidence of small boat crossings coming down. People are still coming. They're just saying, oh, actually, it's quite easy to get in the southern island. It's not talking about it's not stopping boats.
Oh, no, but it's
which is Rishi Sunak's own mark of success.
It's always designed to be a deterrent, though. It's always designed to be a deterrent.
It's not deterrent.
To ultimately stop the... Oh, let me pick up on one more. William says, France and the EU have passed the hot potato to us, i.e. Britain, and if we're now passing it back to the EU, that's fine. Do you agree with William?
Yeah, that's exactly how policy works. That's why we have such good relationships with our EU allies. This is why they're so willing to work with our government. This is why there have been no problems so far. No, this is what the UK has been trying to do all of this time, and it didn't work. I'm going to read Adrian's message because I agree. Adrian says, anyone with the right mind would say this is a joke of an idea and it will never work. It's just a disaster in the making. And I agree. There are people all over the world watching the British government who has been trying to pass this bill through the parliament for the last 2 years, and they're thinking, what the hell happens to this country?
Governments like Italy, which is proposing to do something very similar, offshore processing rather than offshoring. Other governments are following.
Yeah, people keep on asking me, saying, oh, Stella, why don't you go back to Greece and accept all of these asylum seekers and the refugees? Why don't you ask the Greek government? Like, as if I agree with what the Greek government is doing to refugees. As if I think, is this what you really want? You want to have clips of British coast guards pushing boats with children in them back into the water and risking their lives in the same weeks when you have children dying in the channel. Is that what you want?
No, I don't think that's what people do want, which is why I asked Zoe, and it wasn't her comment, it was one of our texters about, say, well, stop them coming. How do you stop them? I don't think we really know the answer to that. But Zoe, isn't it a bit of a false sort of belief that the EU in some way cares about Britain? You say we should care about France or we should care about Ireland. It's completely... They don't care about Britain's immigration policy. They don't care.
No, of course they don't, because we've left.
Well, exactly. So why should we be, wringing our hands saying, well, France can't cope with all of these people? Well, so what? I mean, that was the whole point of leaving the European Union.
Yeah, we never should have left in the first place. So many of the issues we are facing now require this global cooperation. The idea that Britain can go back to being a isolationist nation, which can be totally in control of its own borders, clearly that's not the case. I mean, we're seeing here people will do...
Why can't we be in control of our own
borders? Because look at us,
we're
incapable. We're not doing it, are we? We can't do it without cooperation with France. If we could do it without cooperation with the French, then we would be. We can't. It's a fallacy that we can control our borders, that we can be a secure sovereign nation without talking to.
Well, I mean, that's one heck of a statement, because I would say that every voter I've ever spoken to says that is the primary job of a government. If you don't control your borders, you are not a sovereign nation. What you're basically saying is Britain is not a sovereign nation. I do not agree with you.
It's time to be honest with the voters then, isn't it? I mean, I think, to be quite frank, we cannot tackle these problems on our own. We're not the country we were, 200 years ago. We're just not. Times have changed.
Well,
everything's interlinked.
I believe in Britain. I don't think this idea that Britain is incapable of defending ourselves. We're a permanent member of NATO, permanent member of the UN Security Council.
Exactly. And what do those institutions have in common? They have other countries in them. We're stronger together.
But they're not. But they're not telling us what to do. The idea that Britain cannot defend her own borders is absurd.
Then? Why join NATO?
Because it's a collective defence.
Exactly,
alliance.
Collective. That's what we need.
So you think if we were still in the EU, that these boats wouldn't be coming? Is that what you're saying?
I think they may still be coming, but we definitely...
So they would still be coming. So why do we need to be in the EU?
Well, they'd be coming far less than they are now. We'd have much better relations with the French. We'd probably have police on their borders. There'd be much
We've already got police on their borders. We're already paying them £500 million a year to stop people.
There would be a much more joined-up approach, and I think it would be much more successful. We don't have... Our Home Office isn't set up for this. Border Force isn't set up for this. One thing that Labour points out is that...
I just think that is so naive, that if Britain was still in the EU, the French are effectively saying, right, we won't house you, we won't look after you. By the way, Britain's this way, off you go, because they do not want to take responsibility for refugees who are arriving in France. And the idea that if we were still in the EU, the French would take a different approach. Because the French government believes in France.
Jake.
They don't want to house the asylum seekers who go to France. So they want to push them into the UK. And that's all the British government is doing. It is saying, no, France, we shouldn't be in a position where you are just sending asylum seekers to the UK.
There's no silver bullet, but one thing that every party agrees on is that the only way you're going to actually deal with this issue is if you get right back to the source and you have this kind of cross-border policing and surveillance. And at the minute, we're not in a position to do that. We would be much better prepared to do that if we were in the EU. We were sharing intelligence, we were sharing data, we were sharing expertise.
So we still is sharing intelligence.
Yeah, but we know that in the EU, relations would be far better. I mean, it's just naive to act like... Obviously, we left the EU for a reason. We did that because we wanted to sever some of those ties.
Because the British people want to be in a sovereign nation where we defend our borders, rather than a nation
they weren't told the truth, Jake, about what we're capable of.
Subject to the rest of Europe saying, no, actually, we don't care about your sovereignty. You just have to... This is why people left. It's exactly this sort of issue.
The thing is, Jake, you need political buy-in from the other countries. You need the French government to feel like it looks good to their voters when they're being nice to the UK government and they're being cooperative. And when the UK government, for the last few years, has acted as if its lethal enemies are right across the pond, right across the English Channel, then why do you expect these people, these politicians, to they go back to the voters and give concessions to the British government? This is why it has harmed the position of the UK government in the EU. It has harmed us so much to have all of these prime ministers who have continuously trying to put all of the blame on other EU countries. Because they've seen the game that we've been playing, they don't like it, they're not going to play along.
And Ireland's playing it now as well, apparently.